Our contributor tonight from RonKayeLA.com, Ron Kaye. Well, Ron, this is a horrible situation. There is no question about it. Do you think the judge made the right decision here?
Well, my understanding of the facts are absolutely. I mean, there was some kind of event that took place between Pena and the mother of the child.
Correct.
Beforehand, he threatened to kill her, himself, the baby. He said he didn't want the baby with her. He's coked up. He's got a small little used car business. He's obviously over the edge and broken down. The cops, I mean, I've read the lengthy year-long report that it took to investigate this thing. I talked to Carmen Trutanich, the city attorney, last week, and he was adamant there would be no settlement, that the police did everything humanly possible, and the judge agreed that there was no possibility of a verdict in favor of Susie Pena's mother. So I don't know what else we can do. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy. It's only the second time in 40 years that SWAT actually killed somebody in the course of one of these terrible incidents. But how much can we expect from cops trying to do their jobs?
All right, let's move on to our next topic now. And that next topic has caused quite the stir. Don't know if you heard about this. Episcopal church leaders in L.A. on Sunday nominated 2 openly gay priests and bishops, becoming one of the first dioceses in the national church to test a controversial new policy that lifted a de facto ban on homosexuals in the ordained hierarchy. As you can imagine, church conservatives are not pleased and predicted that this would cause a greater division in the U.S. church. Others say it's apparent the Episcopal Church is moving in the direction of the new theology and embracing this new practice. Ron, this may not sit well with a lot of people. But is it time for folks to realize things are changing, even in church?
You know, I used to be a great follower of professional football and baseball, but it's so out of whack, it's hard to follow it too closely. I like amateur sports. Politics and religion are my favorites these days. And what's fascinating to me about this story is that we have people whose whole life is about the spiritual nature of human experience, and to watch them tussle with whether a person's private sexual conduct is qualifies them or disqualifies them to be a spiritual leader. I don't know about you, but when I'm looking for spiritual guidance, when I'm looking for help with the inner person, I'm looking for somebody who knows something about that, who is experiencing it, and I really don't care what they do when they go home at night and go to bed with somebody.
But the conservative would say, Ron, no, the Bible doesn't allow for this. This is not how we live our life.
Well, that's true, and I think that's what's interesting about it is they're also spiritual people. They're people who are practicing religion, are engaged in their religion, and certainly in the Christian religion, at the heart of it is love and forgiveness. And I think it's really therapeutic for them to go through this. I think the Anglican Church has been careful. The issue came up, 6 years ago. They put it on, sort of tabled it until this summer, and they've opened the door again, and it's back on the table. I think we've seen over the last 5 or 10 years a major shift and a greater degree of tolerance of what people do in their private lives. I mean, sexual behavior is a continuum from one end of behavior to the other. The real question is are they good people with deep spiritual lives? And I honestly believe that it's a positive conversation and that people will work it out for the most part. Some people just won't be able to let go and will find, their religious practice in a different direction. But that's how institutions evolve. I certainly think that when I first had to deal with it as editor of the Daily News, 8-10 years ago, it was a difficult one. Conservative audience, very set in their ways. And as far as I could go was to talk about we need marriage contracts. We need to have people have equal rights and to sort of duck the marriage issue itself. And I think that since then, we're obviously in California now split 50-50 according to the last election. But certainly society's evolved, and I think that people will have to engage their own religious beliefs and work it out. My sense is that It's different even than it was 5-6 years ago.
Right.
And the church will survive this time rather than being torn apart.
All right, let's move on to our next topic. If you had the power, would you let O.J. Simpson out of jail? He was convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping. He's eligible for parole in 2017. He's appealing the conviction, and during the process, he wants to be released on bail. Simpson's attorney says given his notoriety after being acquitted on double murder charges in '94, it'd be impossible for him to run and hide. Nevada Supreme Court justices say it would be highly unusual to grant bail to somebody convicted on violent crimes like kidnapping and armed robbery. Simpson is 62, not scheduled to get out until he's 70. Ron, you're on the Supreme Court. You going to let O.J. Simpson out on bail?
I don't know. I keep going back to the time I had a few beers not long after the trial that he beat the rap in with him at Woodley Golf Course. And O.J. had the best O.J. jokes I ever heard. That was really scary. And the idea of O.J. getting out after this period of time on some technicality is really unthinkable. We've all had a sense of at least a measure of justice from his conviction on this bizarre case over his own paraphernalia from his sports career. But it would be an incredible twist in the whole O.J. story if he's back out on the golf course hanging out with his buddies and doing whatever O.J. does for fun these days.
You know what's interesting? Because obviously, you know, I handle the sports. And if you were to talk to people in the sports world, people that are fanatics about sports, they would tell you, I would say a majority of them, that, you know, he was never convicted of anything. He didn't do it back in '94. He was acquitted. And I always find that just mind-boggling. On talk radio, I use the topic all the time, and there are people that believe this guy can do no wrong.
Well, if Michael Vick can play football again after this brutalizing of dogs, and Pete Rose can finally make it into the Hall of Fame, those aren't exactly murders of human beings. And we all know what happened that night when in Brentwood. I don't think anybody who's paid any attention can doubt that O.J. did it, glove or not glove, fitting him. And there's a difference in crime, and he certainly hasn't repented, admitted, or engaged the subject. He hasn't told what happened, and it's hard to see that any of us, except a few fanatic sports fans who would like to see him, you know, break another 80-yard run, would let go of this thing.
All right, let's move on to our final topic here, something everybody's talking about today. We'll get to it quickly. The president promised no tax increases for the middle class. Some economists are saying that's going to be impossible. Now, you know the old saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. I'm no economist, but I know this. If the government spends more money, we all have to pay more taxes. Of course, this centers around health care reform and the money it would take to enact it. Ron, maybe it didn't seem like such a bad idea if somebody else was paying. But if middle-class taxes are raised to help pay for this, you think hard-working middle-class folk are going to want to pay for somebody else's checkups?
I think middle-class people almost always get the bill. And I'm willing to bet you that before this is done, I think that his Treasury people were looking ahead. There's this false optimism, I think, about economic recovery being just around the corner. And they're looking to the politics of paying down the debt. And you can't pay down massive amounts of debt. You can't raise massive amounts of money without slugging it to the middle class or what's left of it. And mixed signals or not, I think these are very calculated things, and they floated the idea. And inevitably, I think Obama is going to be forced to go after where the real money's at, in the middle of the middle class people.
I've got 20 seconds. If, in fact, that does occur, and we both think it will, what do you think his approval rating will be then with the middle class? Or do you think people will still be enamored with our president?
Well, I think they're gambling on the economic miracle, the Obama economic miracle. If that happens and we've got jobs and our houses are worth something again and we're not frightened about tomorrow, our kids' educations are secure again, I think it won't matter that he raised taxes, that he danced and sang like every other politician we've ever seen.
Ron, appreciate your time tonight. Thanks. Great job.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.